You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
What's up, Los Angeles? Welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network. If you're on radio, back from the break here, final segment of the LA Football Show on the My Dear 1090 ESPN Radio. This is going to be on radio, a USC and UCLA segment. We're going to combine the two here to wrap things up. Podcast, we'll still do it split, and we'll start with USC here. A lot of still stuff to talk about with the Trojans. I mean, they got the Cotton Bowl on the horizon on January 2nd where they face Tulane. So I'll kind of talk briefly about that. And obviously the big news right now is tomorrow. Heisman Trophy announcement. Your Caleb Williams in New York City, hopefully bringing home that hardware back to Los Angeles and the Coliseum where he can get his jersey in the rafters with the other great Heisman Trophy winners of this historic institution. But one thing I got to talk about first, and maybe this bugged me more than it should have. You know, when you cover a team and you're around the team often, you've interviewed the player specifically, you've seen the growth, you've seen just how good they are, and you know that there's been some non-viewership around the rest of the country. That's why I kind of get upset about this. And what I'm referring to, last night, Wednesday night, a lot of the other awards, basically all the other awards outside of the Heisman were given out. The Maxwell Award for the nation's best player was awarded to Caleb Williams. The Davey O'Brien Award for the nation's best quarterback went, surprisingly, in my opinion, to Max Duggan, TCU. Max Duggan has a phenomenal season. TCU, much like USC, was a maligned program last year. You know, Gary Patterson left. They have an interim coach. Sonny Dykes comes in this year. They go undefeated all the way till their Big 12 title game where they lose in overtime to a good Kansas State team. So very similar situations in a sense where, you know, those programs were inherited by bad programs, inherited by new coaches, and then turned around in a single season astronomically going into championship weekend, both sitting at 3-4 in the nation in the college football playoff. And so you can't take anything away from Max Duggan, the season he had, and particularly the game he had to finish out his, I guess they still have, the playoff because they're in it still, but finish out their regular season, a gutsy performance there. So I absolutely do not want to take anything away from Max Duggan. But to me, it's not close. Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in college football. And I think the loss in the Pac-12 title game just proves that even further. I mean, the score was way worse, I think, than the game. Obviously, there was some blown plays there at the end that really blew it open. But with 9 minutes left in the game, it was a 10-point game with USC driving until that last interception. And that was with Caleb Williams playing on a popped hamstring that happened on the first or second possession. And so I think that shows astronomically how good he is. That he was able to battle through and still keep his team in the game, had that amazing fourth down play, the bomb to Addison, evading pressure on one leg, gutting through it. And B shows that, wow, he literally is the team. I mean, we all knew how bad the defense was, and that was on full display. But this team, and again, I haven't watched a ton of TCU football, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend like an expert. But this USC team, I'll just talk specifically on them. You know, they went 11-2. They might be a 6 or 7 win team without Caleb Williams. Maybe not even that. No, no, 6 or 7 wins. I think. I think with Miller Moss at the helm, they could still, put up some points and stuff with that receiving core. But I think that just shows how great of a quarterback Caleb Williams is. So I, for one, I have no idea how he didn't win best quarterback in the country. To me, it was obvious. 2, and this is kind of the bigger point, and this happens a lot with awards. I mean, we see it even in the NFL. But it's like awards nowadays, and I'm not saying just this year, it's probably been like this for some time. But it's almost like the voters are like, well, we can't give one guy too many awards. We got to spread it out. Like, we got to reward other guys. We can't just say one guy is the best at everything. Like, it really seems like that. Like, how do you win the Maxwell Award for the nation's best player, best all-around player in the country, but you're not the best quarterback? How does that make any sense? If you're the best player, then you're clearly the best quarterback too, because quarterbacks are included in players. So it's almost like they're like, well, he's going to win best player. Let's give the second best quarterback the best quarterback so he gets the award too. Now, I don't think this will happen, because usually the Maxwell Award winner also wins the Heisman. So I think it'll get right. But by giving Duggan the O'Brien Award, the Davey O'Brien Award, it concerns me that perhaps somehow they're going to completely mess this thing up and not give Caleb Williams the Heisman. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but it concerns me. Because, again, I was just so floored and shocked that Caleb Williams was not considered the best QB in the nation by the voters. Makes no sense to me. Not only was he better in every statistical category, more yards, more touchdowns, less interceptions, more rushing yards, more rushing touchdowns. Literally every stat he was better in. His team only had one more loss, 11-2 versus 12-1. It wasn't like he was on like an 8-win team vying for this. Going in the championship weekend, they were ranked 3 and 4. So pretty intermittently similar in terms of team resume. It makes no sense to me. None. None whatsoever. So I was very disappointed in that. And again, I said at the very beginning, like, part of it is maybe emotions, just because, I've covered this guy, covered this team. I've seen the 180 this program has taken. Because then you have other things, which I'll get to, I want to talk about too. How does Lincoln Riley not at least get Pac-12 Coach of the Year? Take nothing away against Oregon State Coach Smith. Nothing away against Coach DeBoer up at Washington. Phenomenal, phenomenal seasons. Washington, similarly to USC, horrible year last year, stripped it down, brought in a new coach, brought in some transfers, brought in Michael Penix Jr., and finished essentially with the same record. One less game played, but both only 2 losses. So I get it in terms of that. Coach Smith, Oregon State is Oregon State. I mean, you're not going to recruit like Oregon, Washington, USC. They're just not. And he's built a program up there that is not only respectable, they're damn good. I mean, they're a good football team. Smash mouth. So I get it. But the USC was 4-8, and they go to the Pac-12 title game the next year? And some people are like, yeah, but we had Caleb Williams. Well, apparently not even the best quarterback in the country. And then B, Coach DeBoer up in Washington had Michael Penix Jr., who also transferred, who was the nation's leading passer. So, an argument can be made for all three. Again, I don't think it's like egregious that those two guys got it, but I do think it's egregious that Lincoln Riley wasn't included in that. And I heard someone else say, well, expectations weren't as high for those teams as they were for SC. Like, this was expected. I kind of get that. I don't think anyone expected SC to be in the college football playoff going into championship weekend. I think they expected this to be an 11-2 team, 10-3. I think that was the expectation. There'd be a very good turnaround. They were a year away from playoff contention, but they could compete for the Pac-12. I think, yeah, that's fair to say. I don't think the expectation was this would be like this number one offense. You got to, as great as Caleb Williams is, you got to give some credit to the coach, right? Like, we're at a point now in time when people like to cherry pick who they give credit to, like if it helps their narrative. Like, well, okay, look at Kellen DeBoer, like what he did. Look at how he made Michael Penix Jr. the transfer and from Indiana and how great he made him. But then when you look at like, well, he had Caleb Williams, the best quarterback in the country, even though he's not the best quarterback in the country, according to AP voters. So it's like, we can't cherry pick who we want to praise and who we don't. How does USC have they get the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year? Obviously, Caleb Williams. Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, Tuli Tuipulotu, but not the Pac-12 Coach of the Year after going to the Pac-12 title game. Just, I don't know. Surprising to me. I thought I was a lock. Like, I literally didn't even think I'd be having this conversation. I would have mentioned, like, oh, by the way, Lincoln Riley wins Coach of the Year. Let's move on. So, interesting stuff. And we're going to do a live show tomorrow on LAFB Network after the Heisman. Hopefully, in elation, talking about Caleb Williams winning the Heisman, bringing it back to LA. So we'll do a show tomorrow on LAFBnetwork.com, on USC LAFB YouTube page, on the main LAFB Network page. So make sure SC fans to check that out and come join us, hopefully, and celebrating, popping the bubbly, the champagne, cracking a cold one, pouring some whiskey, whatever it is you drink, hanging out, talking the great season, and we can forget about the Davey O'Brien Award, and we can just talk about the Heisman, the most coveted award in all of sports, hopefully going to Caleb Williams. And that should be a lot of fun and a good time. So if you're on podcast platform, if you're on the USC, quick one for you. But let me know your thoughts, and then we'll be back tomorrow, obviously, talking Heisman. So
you're listening to the LA Football Podcast.